was February of 1942, and an executive order was signed to deal with the problem of the unwanted minority. There had been earlier indications that such a move would take place. Laws restricting land ownership, laws restricting the practice of professions, laws barring citizenship. But it was still a breathless event when the curfews enforced by the military moved to what the top military commander recommended as the final solution. And so they were torn from their homes, put in trains, taken by tens of thousands to the crucible of the concentration camps. You've heard that story many times and are no doubt visualizing those events in your mind's eye. You're perhaps even wondering where the lawyers in the courts were and why they didn't speak up. And you should, for the general was General John DeWitt, and the executive order was written by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And the unwanted minority was Japanese Americans. But don't weep yet. In June of 1943, a unanimous Supreme Court upheld the first two convictions of violations of the order as having a quote-unquote rational basis. The final case to reach the court in December of 1944, in my lifetime, Korematsu, upheld the conviction 6-3, allowing that military urgency passed a rigid scrutiny test. There were 3 dissents, as you've heard. One notably by Justice Owen Roberts of the Switch in Time Saved 9 fame, as well as Justices Robert Jackson and Frank Murphy, the latter of whom referred to the order with naked truth as, quote, the legalization of racism, unquote. Those two were FDR appointments. As by way of a postscript, the Supreme Court never revisited the issue, but in the 1980s, federal district court judges reversed all 3 convictions, and in the late 1990s, President Bill Clinton, in a White House ceremony, awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Korematsu. In short, all 3 branches of government had failed to protect not only these 3 men, but tens of thousands constituting an unwanted minority. How did that happen, and does it matter? It happened because our countrymen feared something other than fear itself. No surprises there. Legislatures and executives are political animals and will almost inevitably cave in to majoritarian values. But it matters to us particularly because of what happened in the judiciary. The much celebrated positive parchment, or protective parchment, establishing our system of checks and balances, ballyhooed by Madison and Hamilton, had failed and failed utterly. And a medal pinned on one victim among tens of thousands over 50 years later may be sweetly symbolic of Lincoln's better angels in ascension, but we lawyers and judges, as the architects and enforcers of our domestic civilization, must demand an unvarnished accounting from Lady Justice. We know through the history of Korematsu, as well as hundreds of other cases, that decisions are made for political reasons at all levels. And to call them political is not to say that they were or are corrupt or of evil intent. Indeed, the Korematsu decision was written by the great defender of the First Amendment, Justice Hugo Black. And I consider FDR one of our greatest presidents, and the Supreme Court of 1943-1944 one of our most distinguished courts. But the Japanese internment, one of our biggest black eyes. A black eye that would not have occurred if Lady Justice had kept her political blinders on. It is our job to keep pulling those blinders down, to protect Lady Justice and minorities of whatever kind from the majoritarian vision. The strength of this democratic civilization of law that we call the United States of America is not that we do not make mistakes, but rather the ability to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and believe that we can and will do better as we turn the pages of history. If that is a statement of America's historical exceptionalism, then so be it. We as lawyers and judges should and shall strive to approach the one-sentence constitutional goal of holding all men as created equal with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The judiciary, and particularly the Supreme Court, was positioned in the constitutional architecture of our country as the protectors of minorities of whatever kind. Yet historically it has often labored in the majoritarian vineyard to justify slavery, deconstruct the vision of Lincoln during so-called Reconstruction, and manifesting a dedication to the proposition that the property rights of the powerful are unequal, rather than to the proposition that all men are created equal. It held unanimously that women had no right to vote. The struggle to keep our country and state on the right track is both a constant and current one. While some of our earliest colonists, like Rhode Island, sought a separation of church and state to protect freedom of religion, Thomas Jefferson notably sought a separation of church and state to protect the state and keep it free from religion. How much of our current cultural conflict is actually founded in religious concepts and beliefs? Do the churches, or does the state define the word family for a citizen of the state? Do the churches, or does the state define the word marriage for a citizen of the state? Are we as attorneys bystanders to this issue? Or are we obligated to help define and delineate exactly what the pursuit of happiness beyond life and liberty actually means? Taking no position was exactly what the lawyers and bar associations of this country did in 1942, when young Fred Korematsu needed us. Some of our own members, as well as our society, needs us now. Taking no position in the face of injustice is never acceptable, never an option, never permissible, never. We stand about 24,000 strong as an army dedicated to that justice, consecrated in the morning blood of Concord and Lexington, following her trumpets toward a constant new dawn, new dream, and new world of happiness for all. Although our law business may demand of us a daily realistic pragmatism, our law profession demands of us an idealistic philosophy of law. Without it, we are a ramshackle collection of empty suits signifying nothing. Our MSBA Articles of Incorporation state that, and I'll read that to you, the purpose of the corporation, our MSBA Corporation, is to advance the science of jurisprudence, to promote reform in the law. Yet we have had no committee to do that. So today, I am announcing the creation of a committee for the, quote, promotion to reform the law, unquote. It is a committee that I hope and intend to be far-reaching in every area of the law, because no area of the law is so perfect that it cannot be better reformed to serve our society. Consequently, it should be composed of lawyers from every area of the law. Its task may be a daunting one, but our army of justice will not be immobilized by difficulty or dragged down by despair. This is no country for old ideas. If you have a vision of a more perfect law in your area of expertise and are willing to work, I want you for this committee. Any law, any area of the law that you want to make more perfect should be grist for the committee's mill. One can never have too many Jiminy Crickets. Our present Committee on Laws will continue its separate and distinct task of vetting bills proposed in the legislature. I am so proud of you as I stand before you as the chief servant of our society. You make everything in our democracy of law possible. The chair you sit in, the room you are occupying, the electricity we are receiving, the water and food you are drinking and eating, the sewer system, the roads, the communities, the towns, the cities, the state, both physically and governmentally. Indeed, our entire civilization is made possible by what you do. The individual potential of each and every one of our members to impact our society at all levels is without peer. And it is my goal to carry forward the flame of renewal and reawakening that characterized and indeed defined our recent long-term planning retreat. The energy emanating from that meeting was transformative, and steps have already been taken to carry out the mission there mandated. Committee chairmanships are to be limited to 3-year terms consistent with our bylaws, and 10 to 20% of every committee will turn over each year to infuse new blood and new ideas into the committee system, which is the lifeblood of our organization. This has resulted in over 15 new chairs and unparalleled new membership in our committees, with the dissolution of some committees and the creation of others. At the same time, we cannot express gratitude enough for those volunteers who have so generously given of their precious time and energy in the past. In order to be as fair as possible, rotation off of the committees has been done on a first-in, first-out basis. Every committee is now given the task of reassessing its purpose and proposing new goals and a vision unbounded by its former horizons. It is a cardinal rule of biology that every organism incapable of change is dead or dying. We are changing. The long-range planning retreat also recommended similar leadership rotations within our various sections, and I will be asking every new Board of Governors liaison to the sections to report back to the Board of Governors on how well each section has accomplished that over the last 5 years. In that regard, our Board of Governors liaison system to each section and committee has become moribund to such a degree that the sections have felt almost disenfranchised from the Board of Governors, to the point where our membership will have before it a question of changes to the Board of Governors membership. Irrespective of the results of that vote, the Board of Governors liaison relationship must be revitalized, and in order to jumpstart this process, a mandatory reporting system from all liaisons to the Board of Governors will be established. Each Board of Governors liaison will report to the Board of Governors on a revolving basis, allowing for a greater flow of ideas from sections to the Board of Governors and the Board of Governors to the sections and committees. Additionally, instead of one breakfast meeting a year with bar leadership and section chairs, we will have one each quarter in order to further facilitate communication not only with the leadership, but also among the committees. If we are to grow vibrantly, we must communicate better and more often. In that regard, our bar headquarters, a nerve center of our organization, must be as communication adroit as possible. Video conferencing could and will better allow a more geographically enhanced committee and section to carry on the mission of the MSBA. We want people from Garrett County, we want people from this county, we want people from Southern Maryland. We want them from all over on these committees if we can get them, and if we have video conferencing, as we should have had for Lord knows how long, maybe we'll be able to accomplish that. In the forefront of the communication thrust must, of course, be the CLE programs that have arisen Phoenix-like from the ashes of MIPPEL due to the devotion of our CLE committee and the Herculean efforts of the MSBA staff. It must be nurtured and facilitated in every way possible. I have asked Catherine Kelly Howard, to form a blue ribbon subcommittee of past presidents to study the dues structure of the MSBA. Our $125 dues have not increased for 22 years, and as you heard from Mr. Carlin, are the lowest state bar dues in the nation. In recent years, we have danced with our budget balance, sometimes stepping into the red and sometimes stepping into the black. It is highly likely that a recommendation for a dues increase is in our not too distant future. Thank heaven it won't be on my watch. If our CLE section and committee growth and communication continues to grow as it should, we will need state-of-the-art facilities and room. So it may make sense at some future point to have a satellite facility. At present, our bar headquarters is free, courtesy of the University of Maryland, and free is hard to beat. But we should not let our presently free facility confine our growth as an organization. Consequently, when we are discussing dues, an MSBA-owned facility at some future date should not be off of the table. I am also very excited to share with you a new initiative that the MSBA will be engaged in this upcoming year in collaboration with the Maryland Judiciary, which will be headed by the Honorable Pamela J. Brown. Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor has said, quote, "We have a crisis on our hands when it comes to civics education." Right here at home last month in the state of Maryland, the Department of Education advised that by 2012, they will eliminate testing on government as a requirement for high school graduation. In light of this, you may well ask, what can the organized bar do? This year we have formed a special committee which will work closely with the CLREP and the Maryland Judiciary as we launch the Civics Law Academy programs around the state. The Academy engages young people of high school age in learning about the law and society, preparing them to be participants in our democratic society. In an academy, knowledgeable, civically active judges, legal professionals, and educators share their knowledge, experience, and enthusiasm for civil engagement with the young participants. I hope that you will join us as we seek to inspire a new generation on civic engagement and understanding, and understanding what our founding fathers called democracy. Please contact Judge Brown to take part in this critically important endeavor. There are a myriad of other initiatives to discuss, such as the creation of a book of pattern voir dire, potentially a new judge's bench book, should the court allow us to do that. Trying to achieve, as we did with the cell phone, to get one MSBA card that lets you go into any county court in any of the counties of the state. Right now, one county will accept it, another county won't accept it, and it's just been a constant source of problems as to whether or not you're going to get into that courthouse. I would add that while I was in Tennessee, they accepted my Maryland State Bar Association. Without question. Walked right by, said, "Oh, from Maryland." Okay. As well as what the MSBA position may be on controversial issues, but one more must be mentioned, and that's pro bono funding. Nowhere has our mission been more noble and our response more generous, as the report that the Chief Judge told us about has annually reported, and we should be especially proud of our yeoman's work in that area. But a word of warning is warranted, because the road that has been embarked upon of making lawyers and litigants responsible for funding is a dead-end road. It has been necessary to proceed as we have so far, perhaps because we recognize the faces of that need far more than the rest of our society. It is as much society's responsibility to ensure justice for all as to ensure that its citizens get medical care. Our ambulances respond to any medical emergency. Yet our society's attitude toward legal needs appears to be Dylan's, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. It is our job to change that. I enlist the thoughts of each and every one of you in this issue. I throw out there the possibility of recommending that a significant percentage of punitive damages be designated for this purpose, since it is money for damage to our society and should not be a windfall for a particular individual who has received appropriate compensatory damages. I also recommend that the standard for punitive damages should be, quote, reckless disregard for human life, unquote, and not the toothless and virtually impossible requirement of personal malice as is presently the case. Now, it is traditional in this speech to talk a bit about yourself, but actually where I come from doesn't much matter. So let me simply say that my life has been gifted with many mentors who have striven mightily to make me a better person than I am. And as they say in the foreword to any book, anything good came from them, and the rest is my own creation. I thank my mom and dad for always believing in me, my director of novices for enlightening me about believing in more than me. I've had many friends from childhood until the present who have become part of me, and read many authors who have inspired me to do and be a better person. It has convinced me that if anyone reads widely enough, they can only be optimistic about the future of mankind. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank the person most responsible for my standing before you today, my mentor-in-chief, my wife, Caroline. There is no greater advocate for animals, particularly the cats and dogs of this state. She gives speech to the speechless, the ultimate advocate, from the Latin ad vocare. She gives the supreme goal, which is the supreme goal for any attorney. She has also advanced the understanding of the clear connection between animal abuse and human abuse, as well as I'd like as well at this time to introduce a special mentor of mine, my son Teague. Please stand up. Who were kind enough to come down from Boston for the occasion. Children teach their parents at least as much, if not more, than parents teach their children. Caroline's sister Andrea, her husband Jim, and their two very mature children, as you can see, sitting here. Please stand up. But Andrea and Jim. I am also very fortunate to have here today my secretary, Pat Gill, who has been with me since the 1970s and has always threatened to actually type what I dictated. She is joined by another secretary of only 19 years or so, Melissa Hare. As one of our newer secretaries, Judith Kalbach, who has been now with us for 3 years. My partners Bruce Babbage and George Tolley, as well as Allison Kohler and Beth Frey, have been more than generous in allowing me the time to pursue the MSBA agenda, although they also indicated my absence wouldn't have much impact anyway. I have been particularly blessed to have had for 27 years my partner Bruce Babbage, who has always been the legal wind beneath my wings and a ferocious advocate for justice no matter what the personal cost. Bruce, please stand. And I have to tell you, Bruce never goes to anything, so to get him here is... I am especially thankful for my long-suffering former partner of over 20 years, Judge Ruth Jacobowski, for playing hooky to be here. Now, normally when a president such as Tom Murphy departs, it's with a feeling of relief as they turn over the reins. If you looked at Tom, however, you'll see that he was scared to death of what would become of the ship of state that he has so carefully and prudently steered during this past year with such grace and aplomb. Oh well, Tom, what can I say? Tom, as I pointed out, spectacularly and religiously made an interminable number of trips, sometimes twice a day from Rockville to Baltimore, missing nothing. I think he will be needing a new car. That probably what should have been the gift we gave him. His lovely wife, Mary, has become, along with Tom, a part of our family, beyond all that they have done to prepare me for this office. They've encouraged and inspired me to walk in the morning at ungodly and inhospitable times for health purposes. At times, I knew what it felt like to be Toto longing for Kansas. Will you please join me in another round of applause to thank them for years. Who's had a peaceful year, working diligently and relentlessly, polishing the MSBA mark under Tom's leadership, will now have to learn to say, "No, Henry, you can't do that." But somehow, we will overcome the slings and arrows of fortune and the barbs of Gillis. The MSBA is going to lose its peerless voice this September when Janet Eveleth retires. No publication of the MSBA in 24 years has been without her oversight, her wisdom, and her wordsmithing. She has won numerous awards, nationally as well as throughout the region, while showcasing the MSBA. We wish her well. In conclusion, let's make it a better place for all people to receive their unalienable natural rights. And if we do, as the song said, who could ask for anything more? If there is no objection, the meeting will be adjourned. The chair hears no objection. And the 115th annual meeting of the Maryland State Bar Association stands adjourned sine die.
Good job.
This is not a trend.